My name is Phyllis Ressler Goldblatt, and I'm a child of Holocaust survivors. I was born in a displaced persons camp, or a refugee camp, for people without a country in Bamberg, Germany in 1946. Now, if you're quick in math, you all know my age. Those camps were established by the United Nations because the Holocaust survivors couldn't find a country to accept them following the war. All my life, I've been an avid reader, even as a young girl, and I was always drawn to stories of the Holocaust. I guess it was less painful to read them than to hear my family recount the horrors they endured. But every time my mom saw me reading my novels, she would say, "Phyllis, why are you reading fiction when every survivor has their own true story to tell?" Before I begin the extraordinary tale of my mother's survival, I want to emphasize that each survivor has their own remarkable story of torture and escape. Each one deserves to be heard and retold, lest the world forgets. There is a well-known quote that reminds us, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." In Judaism, during the holiday of Passover, we retell the story of the Jews' escape from Egypt over 3,000 years ago. The Holocaust was not even 80 years ago, and already we are challenged by the uneducated and the deniers. In these times of increased hatred and anti-Semitism, it is our responsibility to listen, retell, and never forget. It is both distressing and disgusting in our society today to once again bear witness to acts of hatred against many minority groups. It is heartbreaking to hear such horrible incidents as the shootings at the Pittsburgh Synagogue and the Chabad Synagogue outside of San Diego, as well as the burning of 3 churches in Louisiana. No one should have to fear going to their house of worship. And as we hear about white nationalists destroying the fabric of American values we have so long cherished, you may not realize how this can impact your lives. According to a recent HuffPost article, swastika flyers were dropped by a drone over an Ariana Grande concert at the Sacramento State College campus. It's just horrible. I guess when I refer to a period in our history that occurred 80 years ago, maybe it sounds as ancient as studying the Revolutionary War. But imagine for yourselves, imagine living under a government regime that threatens your every liberty. It reaches out into your community and maybe forbids you to own cell phones, takes away your earbuds, your tablets are next. You're not allowed to drive cars. They take your homes away, and worst of all, what if they separate you from your families and cart you off to who knows where? It may be bizarre to imagine, but the Jews of Eastern Europe never imagined the devastation that awaited them. At the beginning of the war, Jews were forced to scrub sidewalks with toothbrushes, while their former friends and classmates laughed, mocked, and spit on them. This is only one small example of the humiliation they endured because they were Jewish. I would like to recite a poignant poem by a Lutheran minister, an early Nazi supporter who was later imprisoned for opposing Hitler's regime. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. I fear the repetition of history staring us in the face as I see how hatred has infiltrated our society, which makes my mother's story much more relevant than ever. As my mom lay in the hospital in her final days, she took my hand and said, "Phyllis, please keep telling my story." And so I would like to take this opportunity to thank Jupiter High School for offering me this opportunity to help me fulfill my mom's last wish. I want to begin this travail in 1995. My mother was spending the winter in Delray Beach. Her friend in Boca Raton was suffering from late-stage Parkinson's disease, and she paid her a visit. The friend, also a survivor, had a Polish woman as an aide. My mom was also from Poland. They immediately started a conversation. My mom recognized her accent as being from the same area that she grew up, so she asked her where she was from. The aide mentioned the neighboring village to my mom, and the aide, named Wanda, said, "My father-in-law helped Jews escape." Well, to herself, my mom totally discounted this claim, because today, many Poles claim to have helped Jewish people. So where are they? My mom asked Wanda, "What was your father-in-law's name?" "Vladik," she replied, and with that, my mom froze. That was the name of the man who made my mom her false ID card. And so began a relationship between my mother and Wanda. We helped bring her children to the United States and helped settle them in Chicago, where they already had acquaintances. My mother grew up in a village about 2 hours outside of Krakow, Poland, with her mother, father, and brother. My grandfather owned a flour mill, supplying flour to the nearby villages, often extending credit when a customer fell on hard times. In September 1939, Hitler invaded Poland. My mom was 14 years old, her brother was 16. Her mom, my grandmother, was already ill from pneumonia at a time medical care for Jews was forbidden. My mom tore off her yellow armband, which Jews were forced to wear, and ran in search of a doctor or pharmacy. But she was apprehended by authorities and thrown into a filthy, disgusting jail, rampant with insects and rats. She cried for 3 days and nights until my grandfather used some influence and money to find her and have her released. But my grandmother died days later. Shortly after that, the Jews were ordered to evacuate their homes and move into a ghetto. My grandfather said, no, we're not going to do that. We'll never come out alive. And so he told his 2 children, we have to run, we have to hide, and we must each go our own way. If they catch us together, we'll all be killed. Separately, maybe one of us will survive to tell the world what happened here. And they each went their own way. My mother's brother went into the woods and found a group of partisans. At that time, the partisans wouldn't accept girls. My mother didn't know what happened to her father. Can any of you imagine a time like that? Parents asking their teenage children to find their own way in a world in which they were hunted like animals? Can you imagine trying to survive like that, totally alone, penniless, and hungry? My mother stayed close to home, hiding among the weeds on the bank of a river which powered her father's mill. One night, she heard rustling among the weeds. There was another family there. Looking for the comfort of other people, she moved closer. But then a child started to cry. She realized the danger and moved farther down the river. Within hours, she heard dogs, boots, and a machete whipping through the grass weeds. The Nazis grabbed the young family and shot them on the spot. Miraculously, my mother went undetected, but she was hungry, alone, and scared. So she took a chance and went to her Polish neighbor's house, a family with whom she had been friendly. They had children her own age. They gave her a meal, some bread, and hid her in between the planks of their barn. And that's how she lived for about a year. But soon rumors circulated that they were hiding a Jewish girl. The Nazis were searching for her. They came to the barn and with a pitchfork stabbed the planks where my mom was hiding. But suddenly a cow laid down right in front of where my mom was, and so she escaped a certain death. But the experience frightened the neighbors, and they said they could no longer hide her and jeopardize their own family's lives. However, they did know Vladek, the father-in-law of the aide in Boca Raton, and they arranged to have a fake ID made for her. She now had a new name, came from a different city, had to learn about the streets there, her neighbors, the stores there, and so forth, in case she was ever caught and interrogated. She was now a Catholic Polish girl. Alone, hiding by day, walking at night through fields and forests, she tried to find the partisans, but to no avail. She existed eating potatoes, parsnips, and whatever else she could steal while on the run. In addition to fear, loneliness was her only companion. She often wished she had a friend, a sister, or even an inmate to talk to. But she only had cornstalks with whom to share her misery. Eventually, she had the courage to approach a house about 20 kilometers from her home. She begged for a job, anything, working in the fields, housekeeping in their home. She worked hard there for a couple of years, until one day the owner approached her and said, "People around here have seen you, and they think you might be a Jew." My mother vehemently denied his allegations. The owner assured her if she truly was not Jewish, she had nothing to fear. He was calling the Gestapo, and they would find out the truth. In the middle of the night, there was banging on the door, and my mom saw the repulsive German uniforms. That's it, my mom thought. I tried hard, but I'm dead now. They dragged her out of the house, slapped her around a little as the homeowner looked on. They pulled her a distance from the house as her knees were buckling and she was trembling. And they said to her, "Don't be scared. We're not the Gestapo. We're the partisans. We heard you're in trouble. They're coming for you in the morning." They hid her in bales of hay in a horse and wagon, drove about 20 kilometers further again, gave her a new ID, and found her another job. She again worked in the house and their fields. Once a week, a young German officer would show up to make sure the farmer was turning over most of his produce. By this time, my mother was a pretty 17-year-old girl, and the officer about 19 or 20. He was always a little flirtatious, asking her out, but my mom always turned down his advances. One day, he started humming Hatikva, which would later become the Israeli national anthem. Still, my mom was too wary to fall for any kind of trick. And then one day, he just never showed up again. Was he a Jew in hiding? Or a Nazi, maybe against his wishes? Who knows? Life was pretty good for a while. The family was nice. She ate well, but she thought she was the only Jewish person left alive. She went to church every Sunday, fearful of not knowing the prayers. How would she cross herself, take communion, and what would she say at confession, where it seemed to her the world had so much more to confess? She kept a journal through her years in hiding, expressing the fruitlessness of this whole charade. To be the only Jewish person left alive, having to marry a Pole, and not having Jewish children, is that the future? One day, there was knocking on the door. As she answered the door, there's an old beggar in front of her. She looks again, and there is the face of her father. Just by chance, he wandered into the house where my mom was working, about 40 kilometers or 25 miles from their original village. The woman of the house came to the door. "What's going on here?" My mom couldn't cry or show any emotion. She just went to her room. But her dad, the beggar, began to sob. He told the woman it's Easter, and he's homeless. He would work the fields for free, just for a place to sleep and a little food. She gave him shelter in the barn and some bread each day. My mother and grandfather survived the rest of the war, rarely exchanging as much as a glance for fear of being found out. After liberation, this family was both shocked that they were father and daughter and that they were Jewish. They said, "Of course we would have helped you." But how do you know? Who could you trust? My mother and grandfather made their way to Germany, walking over 500 miles and sneaking across borders to reach a refugee camp set up by the United Nations. My parents met there, lived there for about a year, and had a baby while trying to ascertain passage to the United States. You are looking at only a part of that result. In 1993, upon my son's law school graduation, he asked to take a trip back to Poland with his grandparents. At first, my mom was adamantly against such a trip. Why would I want to go back to a country whose earth is steeped in Jewish blood? But later, capitulating to my son, we embarked on the most amazing trip imagined. We found the family who initially hid my mother. They immediately remembered her. "Roger," they screamed. "Is that really you?" They put my son between the planks in the barn where they hid my mom. He couldn't bear more than 10 minutes. We all shared so many more unbelievable experiences on this trip, but I know I should wind this down. When I saw my son argue a case in front of the United States Supreme Court, my heart was bursting with pride. However, my thoughts were of my mom and all the miracles she endured to make this day possible. And to all those less fortunate who did not survive, I may not know your names, but I know your souls, and you shall never be forgotten. In 1947, my family and I left the refugee camp in Germany and arrived in New York Harbor. This was no easy feat. The United States had a quota system for immigrants, allowing only a small number of refugees into the country. Because my mom married into a large family of survivors, which is a whole other story maybe I could tell you one day, we became a family of 11, arriving on the SS Marine Marlin, a former troop ship. We were the largest family of survivors to enter the United States. As the ship pulled into the harbor, passing the Statue of Liberty, my mom, filled with so much hope and happiness, threw the journal that she kept through the years of all of her hardships overboard. She knew she could now be the one to tell the world what happened. My son, daughter, and 4 grandchildren represent the 3rd and 4th generations of the Holocaust. It is my hope they cherish this legacy and continue to tell my mom's story. And I hope you continue to share this amazing story with your family and friends, and do your best to prevent the rise of hatred wherever life takes you.